Welcome back to the Current of Consciousness report. This is Season 2, Coordinates and Cartography of the Soul. What if some of the most memorable images in popular culture are not just entertainment, but symbolic representations of psychological processes unfolding within us? Today I want to explore a concept from Jungian psychology known as the Animus, and how it may appear in dreams, myths, films, and even music videos. Along the way, we'll examine the relationship between the anima and the animus, the process of individuation, Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal, influenced by Fred Astaire's Girl Hunt Ballet, and the symbolic role of the witness in psychological development. The Mothership Lexodus lens is about using symbolic language as a means of understanding ourselves. Carl Jung proposed that every psyche contains both masculine and feminine dimensions. He referred to the inner feminine as the anima and the inner masculine as the animus. These archetypes are not about biological sex. They represent complementary psychological functions that help connect the conscious personality with the deeper self. The anima often relates to feeling, intuition, imagination, emotion, and our relationship to meaning. The animus often relates to discernment, direction, agency, perspective, and our capacity to engage the world with intention. As these archetypes mature, they become bridges between the ego and the deeper dimensions of consciousness. In many ways, the process of psychological growth is not about becoming more masculine or feminine. It is about learning how these forces interact and eventually become integrated. Jung called this process of integration individuation. Individuation is the gradual unfolding of the self. It is the process of becoming who we actually are beneath social conditioning, inherited narratives, expectations, and unconscious patterns. One of the most overlooked aspects of individuation is the role of the witness. We often imagine transformation as dramatic, a battle, a quest, a hero's journey, yet many people report recurring dream figures who are not rescuers or teachers. They simply observe. They witness. Psychologically, this witnessing function may represent a mature expression of the animus, not the masculine as conqueror, not the masculine as authority, but the masculine as awareness itself, the part of the psyche capable of seeing clearly. Annie, are you okay? This brings us to Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal. Most people hear the song as a crime narrative. A woman named Annie has been attacked. Someone keeps asking, Annie, are you okay? But symbolically, Annie can be viewed as something more. What if Annie represents the anima? What if she symbolizes the soul, the feeling function, the inner feminine dimension of the consciousness? In that context, the repeated question becomes, are you okay? What happened to you? What has disconnected you from yourself? The focus is no longer on solving a literal mystery. The focus becomes understanding what has happened to the soul. The phrase smooth criminal is especially interesting. A criminal typically operates through force. A smooth criminal operates through subtlety, charm, seduction, distraction. In psychological terms, the smooth criminal may represent anything that quietly separates us from a deeper nature: social conditioning, external validation, consumerism, false identities, unconscious complexes. The smooth criminal doesn't arrive as an obvious enemy. It arrives disguised as something desirable, something useful, something normal. And only later do we realize something essential has been taken. Viewed through this lens, the song becomes a symbolic investigation into the forces that disconnect us from ourselves. What many people don't realize is that Smooth Criminal visually references Fred Astaire's Girl Hunt Ballet from the band Wagon. This is a significant choice. The original ballet is a parody of detective stories and film noir. Astaire plays a private investigator moving through a world of mystery, seduction, shifting identities, and deception. On the surface, the detective is searching for a woman. Symbolically, he may be searching for the anima. not the woman herself, but what she represents: meaning, truth, soul. The detective archetype is remarkably similar to the mature Animus. He observes, he investigates, he seeks understanding. He asks what is really happening beneath appearances. Notice how similar that is to the recurring question in Smooth Criminal. The detective asks what happened here, and Michael asks, Annie, are you okay? Both are trying to uncover what has occurred beneath the surface. The girl hunt ballet sounds simple, but symbolically it contains an important clue. The hunt is not merely for a girl. The hunt is for understanding, for truth, for the missing piece. In Jungian terms, it resembles the search for the anima, the elusive feminine principle that repeatedly draws consciousness deeper into itself. Many myths contain this same structure. The hero seeks a treasure, a princess, a lost object, a mysterious figure. But beneath the narrative lies a deeper psychological movement, the search for wholeness. At first glance, the title Girl Hunt Ballet appears straightforward. A detective is searching for a woman, but from an archetypal perspective, another possibility emerges. What if the girl being hunted is not merely a woman, but an aspect of the feminine principle itself? This brings us to Diana, the Roman goddess of the hunt and the moon. Diana is a fascinating figure because she embodies two qualities often treated as separate: intuition and pursuit. She is both lunar and active, both receptive and discerning. She moves through darkness not through force, but through instinct. In many symbolic traditions, the moon represents the unconscious dreams, intuition, memory, and the reflective dimensions of the psyche. These qualities overlap significantly with Jung's concept of the anima. Viewed through this lens, the hunt in Girl Hunt Ballet becomes something more than a search for a woman. It becomes a search for orientation, meaning, and contact with the intuitive dimension of the soul. Yet Diana introduces an important reversal. The feminine is not merely the object being sought. The feminine is also the seeker. The anima is not simply waiting to be found, it is actively guiding the search. This shifts the symbolic question from where is the feminine to have we lost contact with the part of ourselves that knows how to navigate through intuition? The detective and the huntress become complementary figures. One investigates, one perceives, one seeks understanding, and one senses direction. Together they form a psychological partnership that mirrors the relationship between the animus and anima in the process of individuation. To understand why the feminine appears in multiple forms throughout mythology, noir, and dreams, we have to move beyond the idea of the anima as a single character. The anima is not one woman, it is a field of psychic potential, a living bridge between consciousness and the unconscious. This becomes particularly visible in Girl Hunt Ballet, where the feminine appears through multiple women rather than a singular figure. At first glance, these characters seem to represent familiar opposites: innocence and danger, attraction and threat, light and dark. Yet beneath the surface lies a deeper symbolic structure. These figures can be understood as psychic polarities within the anima itself. One pole draws consciousness upward toward vision, beauty, meaning, and transcendence. It is the aspect of the psyche that inspires, illuminates, and calls us toward possibility. Throughout history, this current has often appeared through celestial symbolism, stars, moonlight, muses, goddesses, and ideal forms. The other pole draws consciousness downward into instinct, mystery, embodiment, emotion, and transformation. It governs thresholds, uncertainty, the wilderness of the unconscious, and the aspects of ourselves that cannot be fully controlled or rationalized. Historically, this current appears through caves, forests, underworld journeys, dark goddess, and encounters with the unknown. These are not opposing forces in conflict. They are complementary movements within the same lunar intelligence. Like the phases of the moon itself, one reveals while the other conceals. One illuminates the path while the other deepens it. This is where Diana becomes an especially powerful symbol. As goddess of both the moon and the hunt, Diana embodies the paradox of intuition itself. She is not merely an object to be pursued, she is also the force that guides the pursuit. She represents the capacity to navigate what cannot yet be fully seen. The detective believes he is hunting the feminine. The psyche gradually discovers that the feminine has been leading the hunt all along. In Jungian terms, individuation is not achieved by choosing one polarity over the other. Wholeness emerges through learning to remain conscious in the tension between them. The luminous and the hidden, the known and the mysterious, the celestial and the earthly, all become necessary participants in the journey. The role of the mature Animus is not to conquer these forces, nor to reduce them into certainty. Its role is to witness them, to remain present between revelation and mystery, to develop the capacity to observe without collapsing into projection. This is the deeper significance of the hunt. The search is not ultimately for a woman, nor even for an archetype. The search is for the capacity to hold both dimensions of the psyche at once. The hunt is for wholeness itself. If the moon symbolizes intuition, dreams, and unconscious, then Michael Jackson's most iconic movement takes on an entirely new dimension. Michael openly acknowledged the influence of Fred Astaire on his work, and it is difficult to ignore the symbolic relationship between the moon, the detective narrative, and the moonwalk itself. What makes the moonwalk so captivating is that it creates a paradox. The body appears to move forward while actually moving backward. The visible movement and the actual movement are not the same. Psychologically, this mirrors the individuation process. The ego often assumes growth is linear, forward movement, progress, expansion. Yet many of the most transformative periods of life involve returning to what was forgotten. Dreams, memory, ancestral stories, shadow material, lost aspects of identity. At first, this can feel like regression, as though we are moving backward. Yet these returns often become the very mechanism through which growth occurs. The moonwalk becomes a symbolic image of reclamation, moving forward through a return, advancing through reflection, progressing through remembrance. In this context, the moonwalk is not merely a dance move, it becomes a visual metaphor for psychological development itself. The detective searches for Annie, the huntress follows intuition. The witness observes, the moon reflects, and the individual moves toward wholeness by revisiting what the soul has never truly forgotten. Perhaps that is why the movement feels so uncanny. It mirrors a truth about consciousness. Sometimes the deepest movement forward occurs through a return to what has been left behind. And perhaps the most iconic image in Smooth Criminal is the lean. Michael Jackson tilts forward at an impossible angle. The image captivates because it appears to violate ordinary laws. Symbolically, the lean can be understood as existing between stability and collapse, between order and chaos, between certainty and uncertainty. The figure appears to be falling, yet he remains balanced. Psychologically, this resembles the individuation process itself, not standing rigidly in certainty, not collapsing into confusion, but learning how to inhabit the threshold. The lean becomes an image of conscious participation in tension, remaining present while reality tilts. When viewed together, these symbols form a fascinating constellation. Annie, the detective, the smooth criminal, the witness, the lean, the anima, the animus. All of them revolve around a central question. How do we remain connected to ourselves while navigating the forces that shape us? Perhaps the mature animus is not a warrior or a savior, not even a guide. Perhaps it is the capacity to witness, to observe, to remain conscious, to ask what happened, what is true, what am I becoming? The witness does not rescue the soul. The witness helps us see it. If the process of the individuation is a journey back toward the self, then an important question remains: what happens when we arrive? The answer, I believe, is expression. Not because we are trying to prove who we are, but because expression is one of the most natural consequences of becoming conscious of ourselves. Human beings do not simply discover meaning. We have an innate desire to embody it, communicate it, and shape it, and bring it into the world through some form of creation. This creation can take many forms: art, music, writing, relationships, communities, businesses, ideas, and ways of living. What matters is not the medium itself, but the act of translating an inner reality into an outer one. In this sense, creativity is not separate from individuation. It is one of its natural expressions. Yet the process does not end there. The journey toward the self is not a destination, but a cycle. Each experience, relationship, challenge, and insight reshapes our understanding of who we are. New influences enter our lives, old assumptions fall away. Parts of the psyche emerge that were previously hidden from view. The Anima and Animus continue their dialogue. The witness continues to observe, and the soul continues to evolve, and so the cycle begins again. They are not merely abstract psychological concepts. They are living patterns that appear in dreams, myths, films, music, and in symbolic experiences. They remind us that growth is not always about acquiring something new. Often it is about recognizing what has been there all along. The process of individuation is not the creation of a self from nothing. It is the gradual unveiling of what was hidden beneath conditioning, projection, and unconscious influence. As the psyche develops, the animus often evolves from an external authority, guide, or object of projection into an inner witness, helping us observe who we are becoming, rather than telling us who we should be. And perhaps that is why the question continues to echo: Annie, are you okay? Because before we can become who we are, we must first learn to listen for the condition of the soul. And perhaps the deeper task is not simply to find the soul, but to cultivate the awareness capable of witnessing its unfolding. What we create is informed by the past, yet it also becomes part of the future. Every act of expression leaves a trace. Every perspective contributes something unique to the larger human story. We inherit symbols, stories, and experiences from those who came before us, transform them through our own consciousness, and pass them forward in a new form. Perhaps this is one of the deepest functions of creativity, not simply self-expression, but participation. A conversation across generations, cultures, histories, and inner worlds. This is why spaces for exploration matter. If individuation is an ongoing process, then we need places where curiosity can exist without immediate judgment. Places where different perspectives can coexist without requiring conformity to a single ideology or worldview. The goal is not to tell people what to think. The goal is to create conditions where authentic inquiry can occur, where the witness can observe, where the hunt can continue, where the soul can speak. That vision is at the heart of Mothership Lexodus, not a belief system or a doctrine, but as an experimental space for exploration, creativity, symbolism, and conscious participation in the unfolding process of becoming. A place to ask questions, to create, and to remember. Because the journey toward wholeness is not a path we walk once. It is a conversation we return to throughout our lives. And each time we return, we bring something new with us.